First story, Officer Robert Turner. I'm Officer Robert Turner, and I've been patrolling the quiet town of Willowbrook for over a decade. It's a picturesque little place in the heart of Virginia, and for most of the year, my night shifts are uneventful. But there was one particular night that still haunts me to this day. It was the dead of winter, and the snow was falling steadily, covering the town in a thick, eerie blanket. The streets were empty, and the only sound was the muffled crunch of my boots in the snow. I was used to the solitude, but that night was different. I received a call from dispatch about a disturbance at the abandoned Willowbrook Elementary School, a building that had been closed for years. Rumors of it being haunted had circulated for as long as I could remember, but I never believed in such nonsense. As I approached the school, the wind howled, sending shivers down my spine. The school's windows were broken, and the place looked like a scene from a horror movie. I cautiously entered the building, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The first thing that struck me was the oppressive silence. It was almost as if the world had stopped. I moved down the dark hallways, my heart pounding. Suddenly, I heard a faint, childlike giggle. It echoed through the empty corridors, sending chills down my spine. I followed the sound, my flashlight trembling in my grip. I turned a corner and came face to face with something I never expected. A group of children, no older than 10, were huddled together in a circle. They wore tattered, dirty clothes, and their faces were smeared with grime. They stared at me with hollow eyes. "Officer," one of them whispered, "we've been waiting for you." My instincts screamed at me to get out of there, but I couldn't leave those children in an abandoned school in the middle of the night. I radioed for backup and approached the children cautiously. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice trembling. The same child spoke. "We've been hiding from the man in the shadows. He's been following us." I reassured them and told them to stay put while I waited for backup. But as I scanned the dark corners of the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The children were frightened, and so was I. Minutes felt like hours until my fellow officers arrived. They searched the building, but there was no sign of the mysterious man the children spoke of. We took the kids to the station and called social services to take care of them. But the mystery didn't end there. As we combed through the records, we discovered that those children had gone missing almost 30 years ago, and they were presumed dead. Nobody in Willowbrook could explain how they had survived all those years in the abandoned school. To this day, I can't forget their hollow eyes, that eerie giggle, and the feeling of being watched by something in the shadows. It still keeps me up at night, and I can't help but wonder if we left something behind in that forsaken place. Second story, Officer Emma Jensen. I'm Officer Emma Jensen, and my experience on the night shift still gives me shivers. It happened in the small coastal town of Anchor's End, Maine. One fateful night, I was patrolling the empty streets as the mist from the ocean rolled in. The town was known for its picturesque lighthouse, standing tall at the edge of the rocky cliffs. But that night, the lighthouse's beam was strangely erratic, flickering like a broken strobe light. I received a call from a frantic woman reporting a break-in at her seaside cottage. I rushed to the location, the gravel road winding toward the cliffs. The air was thick with salty mist, making visibility low. The crashing waves below were the only sound, creating an eerie backdrop to the unfolding events. When I arrived at the cottage, the door was wide open. I cautiously stepped inside, my flashlight piercing through the darkness. The place was a mess, furniture overturned, and shattered glass scattered across the floor. But there was something more disturbing. The walls were adorned with hundreds of photographs, all featuring the same lighthouse. In some pictures, it stood tall and pristine, while in others, it was engulfed in flames. The variations of destruction depicted in those photos were uncanny. As I inspected the pictures, a chill ran down my spine. That's when I heard a soft, haunting melody carried by the wind. The music seemed to emanate from the lighthouse itself. I knew I had to investigate. I made my way through the dense fog toward the lighthouse. With each step, the music grew louder, but there was no one in sight. The lighthouse's beam continued to flicker erratically, casting eerie shadows on the cliffs. When I reached the base of the lighthouse, the music suddenly stopped. I felt a presence behind me, and I spun around to see a figure shrouded in mist. It was a man, dressed in a tattered sailor's uniform. His face was as pale as the moon, and his eyes were empty sockets. He raised a skeletal hand and pointed toward the lighthouse. Without a word, he turned and walked into the sea, disappearing into the waves. I was left standing there, alone and bewildered. I climbed the lighthouse, determined to solve the mystery. The interior was in disarray, and the music had been playing from an old phonograph. But as I reached the top, I discovered something that sent shivers down my spine. The lighthouse's mechanism had been tampered with, its gears twisted and damaged. I couldn't shake the feeling that the man I had seen was somehow connected to this eerie disturbance. To this day, the mystery of the Anchor's End lighthouse remains unsolved. The flickering beam, the ghostly figure, and the haunting music still haunt my dreams. It's a story I've never been able to forget, and it's a chilling reminder that sometimes, the real horrors are hidden in the most unexpected places. Third story, Officer Michael Greer. I'm Officer Michael Greer, and my story begins in the small town of Eastwood, Ohio. It's a place where everyone knows their neighbors, and crime is rare. But one night, I experienced something that still makes my blood run cold. I was on my usual night shift patrol, cruising through the quiet streets. The town was nestled in a dense forest, which added to the sense of isolation during the night hours. As I turned onto a narrow road that led deeper into the woods, I noticed something unusual. A dim light flickered in the distance, deep within the forest. It was an odd place for a light to be, and curiosity got the best of me. I drove down the winding road, my headlights cutting through the darkness. The further I went, the more ominous the forest became, the trees looming like ancient sentinels. Eventually, I reached a clearing, and there it was, a small cabin, its windows aglow with a warm, inviting light. But something about it sent a shiver down my spine. I approached cautiously, my hand on my service weapon. I knocked on the cabin door, and it creaked open slowly. Inside, I found an elderly woman sitting in a rocking chair by the fireplace. She appeared frail and weathered, her eyes tired but alert. She gestured for me to sit. "Officer," she said, "I'm glad you've come." She told me her name was Margaret, and she lived alone in the cabin. She had been hearing strange noises in the woods at night, sounds like whispers and eerie laughter. It had been going on for weeks, and it was driving her to the brink of madness. I assured her I would investigate, and as I stepped back outside, I heard the faint sounds she described. They were like ghostly murmurs, barely audible but undeniably unsettling. I ventured deeper into the forest, the trees casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. The sounds grew louder, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That's when I stumbled upon something I never expected. In a small clearing, I found a group of people, their faces painted with grotesque masks. They were dancing around a bonfire, their movements wild and hypnotic. The eerie laughter and whispers were coming from them, and their presence was chilling. I stepped back, hidden in the shadows, trying to make sense of the situation. As I observed, I noticed that they were chanting in a language I couldn't understand. The atmosphere grew more sinister by the minute. I radioed for backup and began to approach the group cautiously, my heart pounding. But before my fellow officers arrived, something happened that I'll never forget. The group suddenly stopped their chanting and turned to look at me, their eyes glowing with an unnatural, malevolent light. They advanced towards me, their grotesque masks creating a nightmarish spectacle. I drew my weapon, but the situation had taken a turn for the surreal. Just as the tension reached its peak, my fellow officers arrived with sirens blaring, flooding the clearing with blinding light. The group scattered into the woods, disappearing like phantoms. We searched the area but found no trace of them. It was as if they had melted into the night, leaving behind only a lingering sense of dread. To this day, I can't explain who those people were, what their intentions were, or how they vanished so quickly. It's a nightmarish memory that still haunts me, a reminder that even in the most peaceful places, darkness can lurk just beyond the trees. Fourth story, Officer Jack Taylor. I'm Officer Jack Taylor, and my chilling night shift story took place in the town of Northwood, a sleepy, rural community in the heart of Indiana. Northwood was known for its vast cornfields that stretched for miles, and the night I'm about to describe was unlike any other. It was late autumn, and the moon was hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds. I was patrolling the outskirts of town when I received a call from dispatch about a potential robbery in progress at the old farmhouse on the edge of town. The caller mentioned seeing strange lights and hearing eerie sounds coming from the area. I arrived at the scene, and sure enough, there were flickering lights in the distance, like ghostly lanterns dancing in the darkness. The old farmhouse had been abandoned for years, a decaying relic of a bygone era. As I approached the building, I could hear the faint but distinct sound of music. It was eerie, like a melancholic melody played on a broken piano. The music seemed to be coming from inside the farmhouse. With my heart racing, I carefully pushed the creaky front door open. The interior was bathed in a dim, blue light, and the source of the music became apparent. In the center of the room, a gramophone played, its needle scratching against a warped vinyl record. The room was filled with an assortment of old furniture, covered in dust and cobwebs. The flickering lights were revealed to be a series of candles placed on tables and windowsills. It was as though time had stood still in that decaying farmhouse. I called out, "Is anyone here?" But there was no response, only the haunting music echoing through the still air. I ventured further into the house, my flashlight revealing more unsettling sights. Strange symbols were etched onto the walls, and faded photographs of a family I didn't recognize were scattered around. As I explored the upper floors, I noticed an open door leading to a room that sent shivers down my spine. Inside, a child's nursery was preserved in eerie perfection. Dusty stuffed animals lay in a circle, their eyes reflecting the dim light. The room felt like a time capsule, untouched for decades. I continued to search the house, but my unease grew. The entire place was saturated with an oppressive atmosphere, and it seemed as though I were trespassing in someone's forgotten memories. The climax of the night came when I reached the basement. In the dim light, I saw a figure standing in the far corner, dressed in old-fashioned clothing. My heart leaped into my throat as I aimed my flashlight towards it. The figure was unmoving, its back turned to me. As I approached, I realized that it was a mannequin dressed in a vintage dress and hat. Yet the sense of dread that hung in the basement was overwhelming. I radioed for backup, and my fellow officers arrived, searching the farmhouse with me. But we found no one, no signs of a robbery or any living soul. The eerie music from the gramophone continued to play until we turned it off. To this day, no one can explain the strange happenings in that farmhouse. It's as though the past had left an indelible mark on the place, and that night, I was a witness to a surreal, ghostly performance from another era. Fifth story, Officer Sarah Rodriguez. I'm Officer Sarah Rodriguez, and my night shift story occurred in the bustling city of New York. You might think that strange occurrences are more common in a city like this, but what I experienced was beyond anything I could have imagined. One chilly winter night, I was patrolling a mostly deserted part of the city, where old warehouses loomed like silent giants. The neighborhood had a dark history, and tales of bizarre occurrences were whispered among the locals. I never put much stock in urban legends, but that night changed everything. I received a call about a disturbance at the abandoned Jackson warehouse, a place that had been off limits for years due to its unstable structure. The caller mentioned hearing eerie sounds and seeing strange lights flicker in the windows. I arrived at the warehouse, my flashlight revealing the graffiti-covered walls and broken windows. As I approached, I could indeed hear the sound of muffled voices, like a distant conversation. The place was notorious for squatters, and I prepared for a routine eviction. I ventured inside, the voices growing louder. But what I found was far from ordinary. A group of people, all wearing tattered clothes and smeared with dirt, stood in the middle of the cavernous space. They were engaged in a bizarre ritual. Their eyes were closed, and they chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like a haunting hymn. The atmosphere was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in some ancient, forbidden ceremony. I stepped back, radioing for backup. But as I did, the group of people turned towards me, their eyes snapping open in unison. Their gaze locked onto me, and it felt as though they could see straight through me. With a sudden, collective motion, they lunged towards me, moving with uncanny speed. I drew my weapon, but before I could react, they had surrounded me, their hands reaching for my uniform. Panic set in as I fought to break free. My fellow officers arrived just in time, and a chaotic struggle ensued. We managed to separate the group and take them into custody. But as we arrested them, I couldn't help but notice that their eyes held an unsettling, otherworldly glint. When we questioned them, they spoke of a presence that had led them to the warehouse, a being they referred to as the Watcher. They claimed that the Watcher had been guiding them in their search for something beyond human comprehension. As we searched the warehouse, we found a hidden chamber beneath the floorboards, filled with strange symbols and cryptic writings. It was a place of eerie significance, and we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding. To this day, the events at the Jackson warehouse remain a mystery. The bizarre group's connection to the Watcher, the purpose of their ritual, and the enigmatic symbols in that hidden chamber still haunt my thoughts. It's a chilling reminder that even in the heart of a city, the unknown can lurk in the shadows. Sixth story, Officer David Erickson. I'm Officer David Erickson, and my unsettling night shift story takes place in a quiet village named Brackenfield, nestled in the English countryside. On the surface, it appeared to be the epitome of tranquility, but one fateful night, the village revealed its darkest secrets. It was a rainy, misty evening as I patrolled the narrow lanes, flanked by centuries-old cottages. The village was known for its ancient church, a historic building that had seen generations come and go. That night, I received a call about a strange occurrence at the church, and my heart sank. As I arrived at the scene, the rain fell in a steady drizzle, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The churchyard was illuminated by the pale glow of streetlights, casting long, haunting shadows. The old stone church loomed like a sentinel in the night. I ventured inside, my footsteps echoing in the empty nave. The air was cold, and a sense of foreboding hung in the atmosphere. The church was devoid of any congregation, but there was something peculiar about the altar. A circle of candles burned, their flickering flames casting a ghostly light. They encircled a small, intricately carved wooden box. It was adorned with symbols that I couldn't recognize, and a sense of unease washed over me. As I approached the altar, a whispering voice echoed through the church. It was like a distant chant, and it seemed to be coming from the box. My heart raced as I lifted the lid, revealing a collection of old, dusty books and parchments. Each document was written in a language I couldn't understand, filled with cryptic symbols and diagrams. They appeared to be ancient texts, and their contents sent shivers down my spine. It was as if I had stumbled upon a hidden world of dark knowledge. Just as I was about to radio for backup, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a tall man, his face hidden beneath a hooded cloak. He moved with an eerie grace, his steps silent on the church's stone floor. He spoke in a low, hushed voice, inviting me to join the congregation. His eyes gleamed with a fanatical intensity, and he mentioned a ritual that was about to take place. I refused, and his demeanor grew threatening. With sudden swiftness, he produced a knife from beneath his cloak and lunged at me. Panic surged through my veins as I drew my weapon and fired a warning shot. The sound reverberated through the church, and the figure fell to the ground. My fellow officers arrived, and we apprehended the man. As we searched him, we found an assortment of strange objects, including more of the cryptic documents and an amulet adorned with a peculiar symbol. The man was arrested and taken into custody, but his confession was anything but reassuring. He spoke of a secret cult that had been operating in the village for generations, and their obsession with the dark arts. The documents and the amulet were part of their unholy practices. The cult's existence was a chilling revelation, and the mysterious rituals they conducted in the old church were a sinister part of the village's history. To this day, I can't forget the encounter with that hooded man and the glimpse into a hidden world of the occult that had thrived in the heart of the quiet village. It's a night that continues to haunt my thoughts, a reminder that even in the most tranquil places, dark secrets can lie hidden for centuries. 7th story, Officer Jane Thompson. I'm Officer Jane Thompson, and my unnerving night shift story happened in the small town of Stonebridge, Texas. On the surface, it was an unremarkable place, but one night revealed the hidden terrors lurking in the shadows. It was a hot summer night, and I was patrolling the quiet streets under the starlit Texas sky. The town was known for its historical courthouse, a stately structure that had seen countless trials and tribulations. But on this night, the courthouse would become the center of a disturbing event. I received a call from dispatch about a possible break-in at the courthouse. I sped to the scene, the warm wind rustling through the trees lining the streets. As I arrived, I could hear a faint, eerie hum coming from the courthouse. It was an unusual sound for a place known for silence. I cautiously entered the courthouse, my flashlight guiding my way through the darkened corridors. The hum grew louder, echoing through the empty halls. As I approached the courtroom, I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in a place with a troubled past. The courtroom was bathed in a dim, blue light, the source of which remained elusive. In the center of the room, a group of people stood in a circle, their faces masked with expressions of trance-like ecstasy. They chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like a chilling hymn. I called out, "What's going on here?" But they paid me no mind, their eyes locked onto something beyond my vision. It was as though they were captivated by an unseen force. The atmosphere was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in their ritual. I radioed for backup, and my fellow officers arrived. Together, we attempted to break the group's trance, but it was as though they were impervious to our presence. The eerie humming intensified, and the group's chanting became frenzied. Just as the tension reached its peak, the room's lights flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The group fell to their knees, their faces contorted in fear. It was as though they had glimpsed something far more terrifying than anything I could have imagined. We managed to take the group into custody, but their accounts were chilling. They spoke of a presence that had been guiding them in their pursuit of forbidden knowledge, a being they referred to as the custodian. As we searched the courthouse, we discovered a hidden chamber beneath the floorboards. It was filled with strange symbols and cryptic writings, much like the text I had seen in that ancient church. It was a place of eerie significance, and we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding. To this day, the events at the Stonebridge courthouse remain a mystery. The group's connection to the custodian, the purpose of their ritual, and the enigmatic symbols in that hidden chamber continue to haunt my thoughts. It's a chilling reminder that even in the heart of a small town, the unknown can lurk in the shadows. 8th story, Officer Laura Mitchell. I'm Officer Laura Mitchell, and my unsettling night shift story took place in the coastal town of Harbor's Edge, Oregon. It's a place known for its rugged cliffs, towering lighthouse, and the constant roar of the Pacific Ocean. But one fateful night, the town revealed a dark secret that sent shivers down my spine. It was a stormy winter night, and I was patrolling the darkened streets. The relentless rain lashed against my patrol car, and the town felt eerily deserted. I received a call from dispatch about a possible break-in at the abandoned Harbor's Edge Asylum, a place that had been closed for decades. As I approached the asylum, the wind howled, and the sea's crashing waves added to the ominous atmosphere. The asylum was a towering, decaying structure, its windows shattered and its walls bearing the scars of time. It was rumored to be haunted, and tales of the patients' suffering had lingered for generations. I cautiously entered the asylum, my flashlight revealing the shattered remnants of what had once been a place of torment. The air was heavy with the weight of history, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. As I ventured deeper into the asylum, I heard strange sounds, like distant whispers and eerie laughter. The voices echoed through the empty hallways, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Suddenly, I found myself in a large, dimly lit room. It was filled with old, rusted hospital beds, and at the center of the room, a group of people stood in a circle. They were wearing tattered, blood-stained hospital gowns, their faces contorted in expressions of madness. I called out, "What are you doing here?" But the group paid me no mind. They chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like a haunting chorus. The atmosphere was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in their ritual. I radioed for backup, and my fellow officers arrived. Together, we attempted to break the group's trance, but it was as though they were impervious to our presence. The eerie chanting intensified, and the group's behavior grew more erratic. Just as the tension reached its peak, the room's lights flickered, casting strange, dancing shadows on the walls. The group fell to their knees, their faces contorted in terror. It was as though they had glimpsed something far more horrifying than anything I could have imagined. We managed to take the group into custody, but their accounts were chilling. They spoke of a presence that had been guiding them in their quest for answers, a being they referred to as the Warden. As we searched the asylum, we discovered a hidden chamber beneath the floorboards. It was filled with strange symbols and cryptic writings, much like the texts I had seen in the ancient church and the courthouse. It was a place of eerie significance, and we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding. To this day, the events at the Harbor's Edge Asylum remain a mystery. The group's connection to the Warden, the purpose of their ritual, and the enigmatic symbols in that hidden chamber continue to haunt my thoughts. It's a chilling reminder that even in a place of darkness, the unknown can lurk in the shadows. Ninth story, Officer Mark Foster. I'm Officer Mark Foster, and my eerie night shift story takes place in the small town of Renville, Massachusetts. It's a place known for its dense forests and the echoes of history that linger in the air. But one night, I stumbled upon something that defied explanation. It was a crisp autumn evening, and I was patrolling the winding, tree-lined streets. The town was nestled between the towering Renville forest, and the night air was filled with the rustling of leaves. I received a call from dispatch about a strange occurrence in the woods. As I entered the forest, the trees loomed like ancient sentinels, and the moonlight filtered through the thick canopy. The call had mentioned eerie sounds and the flickering of unnatural lights. I moved deeper into the woods, the darkness swallowing my flashlight's beam. After a while, I heard the sounds, the distant, ghostly whispers, like voices carried by the wind. They were accompanied by the soft, flickering glow of blue lights that danced among the trees. It was a surreal, otherworldly scene that sent shivers down my spine. I followed the whispers and lights deeper into the forest, my heart racing. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, and I couldn't shake the sense that I was being drawn into something I couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, I emerged into a clearing, and what I saw was beyond anything I could have imagined. A group of people, clad in tattered, earthy-colored robes, stood in a circle. Their eyes were fixed on the ground, and they chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like a haunting song. I called out, "What is this?" But the group paid me no mind, their eyes fixed on the earth as they continued their eerie ritual. The atmosphere was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in their mystical gathering. I radioed for backup, and my fellow officers arrived. Together, we attempted to break the group's trance, but it was as though they were impervious to our presence. The eerie chanting intensified, and the lights around them grew more vivid. Just as the tension reached its peak, the lights flared, casting an ethereal glow over the clearing. The group fell to their knees, their faces awash with a mixture of ecstasy and terror. It was as though they had glimpsed something far beyond our reality. We managed to take the group into custody, but their accounts were disorienting. They spoke of a presence that had led them to the clearing, a being they referred to as the forest spirit. They believed that they had connected with something ancient and otherworldly. As we searched the forest, we discovered a hidden stone altar, adorned with strange symbols and offerings. It was a place of eerie significance, and we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding. To this day, the events in the Renville forest remain a mystery. The group's connection to the forest spirit, the purpose of their ritual, and the enigmatic symbols on that hidden altar continue to haunt my thoughts. It's a chilling reminder that even in the heart of a small town's woods, the unknown can lurk in the shadows. 10th story, Officer Jessica Barnes. I'm Officer Jessica Barnes, and my unsettling night shift story took place in the remote town of Cedar Creek, Idaho. It's a place surrounded by thick pine forests, where silence reigns during the late hours. But one night, the town revealed a secret that plunged me into a world of terror. It was a chilly autumn night, and I was patrolling the winding, deserted roads. The town was known for its proximity to the vast Cedar Creek forest, and it was a place where the darkness seemed to stretch on forever. I received a call from dispatch about a strange occurrence in the forest. As I entered the forest, the trees closed in around me, their branches creaking and swaying in the wind. The call had mentioned bizarre sounds and eerie lights among the trees. I moved deeper into the woods, my flashlight cutting through the inky darkness. After a while, I heard the sounds, the eerie, otherworldly whispers, like voices from a realm beyond. They were accompanied by the soft, flickering glow of blue lights that danced among the trees. It was a surreal, dreamlike scene that sent chills down my spine. I followed the whispers and lights deeper into the forest, the sensation of being watched growing stronger with each step. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being drawn into something beyond my understanding. Suddenly, I entered a small clearing, and what I saw was beyond anything I could have imagined. A group of people, dressed in archaic, druidic robes, stood in a circle. Their eyes were fixed on an ancient, gnarled tree at the center of the clearing. They chanted in unison, their voices rising and falling like a haunting incantation. I called out, "What's going on here?" But the group paid me no mind, their eyes fixed on the tree as they continued their mystical ritual. The atmosphere was thick with an otherworldly energy, and I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in their mysterious gathering. I radioed for backup, and my fellow officers arrived. Together, we attempted to break the group's trance, but it was as though they were impervious to our presence. The eerie chanting intensified, and the lights around them grew more vivid. Just as the tension reached its peak, the lights flared, casting an ethereal glow over the clearing. The group fell to their knees, their faces a mix of ecstasy and terror. It was as though they had glimpsed something far beyond the boundaries of our reality. We managed to take the group into custody, but their accounts were surreal. They spoke of a presence that had led them to the clearing, a being they referred to as the forest guardian. They believed that they had made contact with an ancient, otherworldly force. As we searched the forest, we discovered a hidden, stone circle, adorned with strange symbols and offerings. It was a place of eerie significance, and we had stumbled upon something beyond our understanding. To this day, the events in Cedar Creek Forest remain a mystery. The group's connection to the forest guardian, the purpose of their ritual, and the enigmatic symbols in that hidden stone circle continue to haunt my thoughts. It's a chilling reminder that even in the heart of the most remote woods, the unknown can lurk in the shadows. Thank you for watching whole video. Check this video you see on the screen, it's one of my favorite. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and smash that like to support my free and daily content for you. If you enjoyed this video, drop a comment and tell me what story got you chills.